Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. You've read the title, you know what we're going to get into today. The AI Ghiblification of the internet and its implications on artists and human creativity as a whole. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so that you are notified of future videos. Follow along and let's get into today's video. Now, if you'll see me looking to the side, I'm going to make sure that my microphone is close because I am aware that if I move away, it gets a little bit quiet, and that inconsistent audio quality is probably a little bothersome for people, especially if you have this on in the background where you're doing other things. I know I do that for a lot of creators, so I want to be cognizant of that and respectful. And I do want to give credit. I'll probably pop it up on the screen somewhere, but I do want to give credit because this term about slop was created, I think, by a YouTube creator or someone in the space. I'd watched a video about it, so I'll try to put that in the description as well. This whole rebrand or revamp about AI's popularity, going from boomer art into being something more palatable and more enjoyable and more shareable through the Ghibli lens and the aesthetic of it. But I do want to insert more sources here to back up my claims and give you a picturesque, this is not picturesque, this is very, how do you say, ugh. But besides that, give you a more comprehensive picture about where my perspective is coming from. Disclaimer as well, these are all my own opinions. This is not basing anything on fact unless I am reverting it to a very specific source. You've read the title. AI Ghibli art is an insult to all artists. If you're on the internet at all, like me, you've probably seen the new update to ChatGPT 4.0, whatever, which has upgraded its quality. Brought on from support from OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman, people's current hyperfixation latched onto using Studio Ghibli's stylized art to emulate whatever was in their brains at the moment, whether that was something cute or something quite grotesque. We know Rule 34. If someone thinks it up, it probably exists. But the implications of this have spread to larger conversations around ethics and intellectual property theft. Why the fixation on Studio Ghibli's style in particular? And what does this indicate for future iterations of AI and human-wrought creativity as a whole? In this video, we seek to answer some of those questions or at least leave you with some thoughts that you may not have had about AI before. So like I said, I just ask that you come into this with an open mind. I do have bias in this video because this is my opinion and I feel very strongly as an artist myself about a lot of what's happening. So just bear that in mind. Now, I pondered many topics for today's video, but nothing stood out to me more than the Ghiblification of art everywhere. No, seriously. Ghibli AI art is a topic of discussion everywhere you turn. If you're a more casual watcher of Ghibli's films, you're probably wondering, what's the big deal? It's just some cute pictures, right? Right? Wrong. In my channel, we cover the gray, the gay, and everything in between. And boy, is today anything but an in-betweener, in my opinion anyway. Part 1. Let's dive into why are people mad about this to begin with. Most people know beloved movies such as My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Spirited Away, and even Howl's Moving Castle. For many, we see people derive this close intimacy with the characters because there's a level of care taken, almost to an obsessive level many may agree with, to bringing each story to life. For Ghibli fans, which, by the way, Ghibli itself is an Arabic word that means hot desert wind, and this is a style to be admired and cherished. Hayao Miyazaki, as a co-founder of Studio Ghibli, believed this word would signify blowing a new wind or new life into the anime sector. In my opinion, there is considerable backlash because the underbelly of all this proves, yet again, to commodify and automate the human creativity process. Why this pisses people off is because there's a huge misconception around artists always being skilled. That couldn't be further from the truth. Artists had to work for every proportion, every brushstroke, every angle, and painstakingly form it into their idyllic final piece. Nobody is born an immaculately talented artist. Everybody had to work for it, even the people who have what they call innate talent, right? Or an affinity to something. Studio Ghibli has a signature style, and people enjoy the deeper representation of that style. We all make associations in our head about things. For many longtime fans, like myself, Ghibli symbolizes coming of age, anti-war, pro-environment, beauty otherwise unnoticed from Miyazaki himself, and making tough choices outside of yourself and for the greater good, of finding yourself and leaning into connections to self-actualize. Let's use Kiki's delivery service here as an example. In case you've never seen it, Kiki is a 13-year-old witch who follows a tradition to relocate somewhere new to both develop and complete her training. All witches in the world of this movie have different skills like potions making. She arrives at a seaside town and starts a flying courier business to deliver parcels faster to people. That's the summary, but not the main point of the story. I just wanted to paint a baseline summary for you. The core characterization and what draws people to the story on an emotional level is that Kiki starts feeling like she doesn't fit in and suddenly loses her power. She becomes uncertain of her place in the world and why she started doing her deliveries in the first place. To get it back, she has to lean on others around her to help her find her way again. They don't spoon feed her the answer, but they do encourage and imbue wisdom on her to reflect and tap into why she started her delivery business to begin with. This discovery of the self is how she gets her powers back and saves Tombo from falling off the dirigible later on in the movie. Another great callback to the industrialization being the antagonist slash enemy oftentimes in Miyazaki's films. Kiki's delivery service in particular is still probably one of my favorites because it was such a foundational piece for me as a kid to have confidence in who you are and to be proud of that. There will always be times you feel unsure or falter, but overcoming that was how she grew. And one thing with Kiki in particular, I'll go off script briefly, is she didn't necessarily have an affinity to like potions like I believe her mother did, or some other hands-on skill. I think she runs into a witch on the way to traveling from her parents' house to the seaside town, and I believe she was a fortune teller. And Kiki felt very lost because she didn't necessarily have an innate talent, so she leaned into what she knew, which was flying. Now, all witches fly, I believe, and she also had a familiar, but it's that unique thing that she wasn't necessarily special, but leaning into that and being authentic is what brought her back to herself, that many people find compelling and, I don't know, fulfilling and heartwarming, right? Now, you can't replicate the magic of that in an AI-generated image, in my opinion. So people who are seeing this and getting upset, especially if they're artists themselves, are valid and deserves a discussion here, which is why we're here to begin with. This AI stylized generation is co-opting Studio Ghibli's style to repackage it in a beautiful imagery that emulates the style, yes, but it lacks the heart, and human creativity is the path to that heart. Another point brought up is that Miyazaki himself is viciously against AI, calling it an insult to life itself. That line wasn't recent, by the way. It was a limited run documentary that I saw years ago, back in 2016, entitled Never Ending Man, Hayao Miyazaki. Younger artists were showing him what AI models were currently capable of, which were some really grotesque-looking humanoid blobs learning how to move and walk. Now, did they purposely show him the grossest thing to elicit such a visceral reaction from him in the documentary? Potentially. Either way, it's another reason why people have such an angry reaction. Knowing Miyazaki is also against it feels like a betrayal of the style and the work. More on this point later, but I think it is important to point out this quote is flying around media articles right now, but it is not a direct quote or it's not a direct reply to this specific AI generation. It was something that happened almost 10 years ago at this point. Pro-AIers may also be wondering, well, people draw fan art of these characters. How is an AI-generated image any different? And to that, I point back to the fact that it was human-created, not machine-created. Fan art has, time immemorial, always been a way to celebrate media. It's a way to find fans and partake in a community-based celebration of your love for something, whether that's an in-person or digital event. Oftentimes, inspiration from one piece of art breathes life into something else, something transformative with similar beats or nods to its origination point. AI art cannot create something new, but simply imitate and use existing art as a base for its creation. And while, yes, people do trace art and steal or plagiarize it, it's not the same as training a computational model to replicate and metastasize all over the internet for cheap gain at a breakneck pace. Because really, what do we get out of generating these images? We get a quick giggle and a share of the internet. As this interview from The Atlantic states, these are things that are made to be posted, and that's where their life ends. There's a sense of it being nakedly transactional, another reminder that we're in a world that appreciates quantity over quality. I'm seeing AI slop get used for this AI Ghibli. Credit to Lessons in Meme Culture for a great descriptor here. And I tend to agree with this take. Many of the images, while looking and quacking like a duck, lack the substance and meaning behind the original works. It's derivative and simply clogging our internet pathways with heaps of data that are only designed to be shared. As an artist and creator myself, I challenge you to think of art that you really love and to think why you like it in the first place. It doesn't have to be classical art paintings. It can be a song or a book or a cartoon or even a podcast episode or video game. We resonate with art because of what it speaks to us about us, within us. The outrage over AI art is technology has once again commodified a skill that takes years to curate, nurture, and grow, and is selling everyone back a cheap version under the guise of accessibility. Disabled people create art, and you can too. Nothing you do is going to be a masterpiece the first time, but that's precisely the human experience and why art is so precious. It represents the journey you take to become better and improve. You can see it from Dali's works and even from Shakespeare. Speaking of, Shakespeare was a brilliant wordsmith that got better through trial and error. Look at his earlier works like Romeo and Juliet and A Midsummer Night's Dream. While skillful and beloved, some of his most masterful works transcend even human language. But he wouldn't have been able to achieve that without trial after play after play after play. He wouldn't have learned that until he did play after play after play to reach that point. I took a few Shakespeare classes in college, and let me tell you, the verboseness of those two plays show how he was still learning his craft. Brevity is the soul of wit, as he himself is attributed to saying, because it illustrates your command over language and its impact. Now, you're perfectly sound in disagreeing with me, since there are lots of his plays I love and dislike. But Romeo and Juliet showcases young love and a surface-level enticement to lust and family feuds. King Lear, as an example, goes deeper into the consequences of aging and making the right choice. Act 5, Scene 3 is King Lear holding his daughter Cordelia in death and having this moment to howl. Not an entire monologue of her death. It's overall a shorter, more succinct, verbal portrait of suffering. It's considered one of the most poignant scenes in theater, and to no surprise. Romeo, upon seeing Juliet, if you see the screenshot, I had to zoom out the screenshot, but I'll try and put comparisons of the two here. It's obviously a lot longer and you can visually see that. That's not to say longer works are better or worse than short ones. It's the conveyance of an idea in such a concentrated way that proves his skill to many, especially in King Lear, which has largely been very critically acclaimed as one of his most poignant and powerful works. Now, this is just one example. No one explicitly asked for AI over artists. It's big tech once again encroaching upon creative spaces to find a way to co-opt it and add more chum and slop to the already cluttered internet. There's a reason we value classical art and literature authors such as Jane Austen and Shakespeare. Literature as a term is an indicator of having timeless themes and artistic merit. What artistic merit does AI have, I ask you? For now, I'll leave it at that, but I could do a whole other topic on this video, just on this alone. Part 2. Questions AI poses. Now, I want to make sure we're asking the right questions here. I want to make sure we're asking the right questions here, though, as we've gone through part 1, establishing why people are upset and really the meaning of art and the reward of doing it as unlocking elements of human creativity. On this channel, I'm a big proponent of disclosing my own bias, as well as logical fallacies and thinking critically. However, I do believe multiple things can exist at the same time. For many who side with Miyazaki here, and that's the basis of their outrage reacting to these images, well, friends, I'm sorry to say that we've all fallen victim to the intentional fallacy. This is the fallacy of basing an assessment of a work on the author's intention rather than on one's response to the actual work. We must not disentangle our valid anger toward these images on the sole basis that Miyazaki also doesn't like them or considers them an insult to life. They are, trust me. Criticize these images for being cheap recreations that violate your beliefs and values and that you learned from the work. Now, those things may be closely aligned, and it's a very subtle distinction, but I believe it's important to building a compelling case against AI slop as a whole to notate here. Be able to disentangle the fact that just because Miyazaki doesn't align with it doesn't mean that you should automatically say that it's bad because of that. It's bad regardless of that. It's bad because of that, and specifically because of your belief that this is ethically wrong. I want to point out this University of Pennsylvania paper about the intentional fallacy that depicts something important about what I just mentioned. The poem is not the critic's own and not the author's. It is detached from the author at birth and goes about the world beyond his power to intend about it or control it. The poem belongs to the public. It is embodied in language, the peculiar possession of the public, and it is about the human being, an object of public knowledge. What is said about the poem is subject to the same scrutiny as any statement in linguistics or in the general science of psychology or morals. We must not decry it because of the intent or perceived intent of the original artist, but of how these pieces violate our sense of morality and the world around us. This is especially where I have a collision of multiple things can be true at the same time, because if clear, I believe you can't fully separate the artist from their art. But in this specific instance, the style has been ripped from the artist, and so we too must disembody our perceived intention of Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli itself here to point out why it's problematic. Part 3, conclusion. Honestly, in conclusion, AI Ghibli sucks. I know. I'm giving you the tools to build a qualified, well-constructed opinion and argument against this, and here I go off the rails being subjective. As you know, these are my opinions in these videos, and quite frankly, pumping out this art doesn't add value or meaning into a world very sucked dry of anything substantial anymore. All of our movies are sequels or remakes of existing work. New original projects get squashed after one season and don't even have time to breathe. Book deals are also expedited with insane deadlines to get 3 to 5 books knocked out so they can be all released in a 1 or 2 year time span. This goes far beyond Ghibli, but all creative media in general. This is a huge dog whistle that the corporate elite have never respected artists and never will. So I will leave you with some of these thoughts and my own off-scripted opinion as we get to the end of what I've written out. But it's not all bad. Not all is doom and gloom, and AI hasn't taken over. There are still incredible creators out there, and I strongly invite you to support them and curate your feeds to uplift people who are still actively drawing and making things. I know that's a goal for me, to curate my Instagram and my TikTok feeds to be full of good ideators, good creators, people who inspire us, ways we can stay aware, ways we can use art to make statements and express ourselves. I'd love you guys to comment your favorite creators below as a response to all of this, whether it be an artist, author, Etsy seller, anything. I do want to continue advocating and supporting artists, alternative musicians, all sorts of people whose voices we need to be amplifying because they're speaking for the right causes and believing in the right things, which is really community at the end of the day. So, bonus part here. I'm curious what you guys think. I scripted this all out. I really thought it was going to be longer, but I'm kind of proud of being a little bit concise. I enjoyed pulling some sources and really thinking critically and putting a new angle on this. I think we need to be critical of things for the right reasons. And I really believe there is a degree of the artist's intention that lives on in a work, but that cannot be the only foundational element as to why we're criticizing AI. There are so many reasons to criticize AI. There's dozens and dozens out there, mainly that it is theft, it is co-opting artists' styles as it continues to improve and suck the life from the creativity of the human experience. I mentioned this in my TikTok video that there's this sense of desaturation in coffee shops and in these spaces where we hold community. They used to be colorful, and there are some that still exist, but they are having a hard time. They're struggling. And I will be really sad the day that you can't find a funky coffee shop in a city because all those people have had to leave because the cost of living is too much. What message are we sending when creators and artists, which already have such a huge risk to lean into that art in spite of the risks, in spite of the scrutiny, in spite of the criticism from everybody around them, if we keep sending this message to corporations that we're okay with slop, we're gonna get a lot more slop, guys. It's only just the beginning. You have power. If nothing else has shown with these boycotts, it's that where we put our money matters when we're able to. The algorithm will support and favor AI because of its shareability, because of how viral it can be and how it can metastasize quicker than an artist can create. It's not something I can just shoot in and out of a machine and generate. Creativity doesn't work like that, and AI slop is another way of devaluing that process, because it isn't necessarily about the final product for a lot of artists. It's about the journey to creating and coming to that final step and that final brushstroke or whatever it is. And people who don't partake in that, there's something to be lost in the human experience there. I feel very crestfallen that we've transitioned from boomer art to this, and Ghibli AI art might be the impetus for it being more shareable and going viral and just being this thing that we have to consume. And makes me wonder how much people realize that it's actively harming the artists and the people in their lives who create things. Just because a machine can create 25 watercolor paintings and a human only has the power to do maybe 1 or 2 in that time frame should not devalue or minimize the worthiness of the human creation. Art also encourages us to have community. That's another huge theme in Ghibli's films, is these characters find their way and they self-actualize and grow because of the people around them. It's not just from themselves. It's always deeper. And that's the slight here, right? That's the deep insult that artists feel, because for others, it might just look like a final picture or product. But for us, it's our soul being shown to the world. It's our soul being turned outward. And that's not easy. And when we commodify that and we prove that we value AI creations more than human creations, I really dread what the world is going to look like. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you liked the video, please subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let me know what other topics that you'd like me to cover. What's your opinion on the Ghibli AI stuff? I'd love to hear your comments below. And if there's anybody else you'd like me to cover, I'm happy to do so. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!